I had a leopard in my bed for 4 months. And then I had a tiger in my bed for another few months. And I grew up with a mom who was the first religious Haredi veterinarian. I always grew up with a role model of real professions. That was always in my family. But I said, there's no way I'm going to become a vet.
So let's start with the beginning.
I'm Avigail Nadav. I have a global manufacturing company, all things beautiful for the house. And I said, this is where my edge is going to be. Manufacturing very high-end in China, but still allowing customers for it to be affordable for them. We failed at it so many times. I remember saying, I can't do this. I'm done. If you're just going to continue being the victim, you're getting nowhere. Okay, yalla. What's the worst that's going to happen? Do not think small. And I really believe it, that it's all from there. So keep going, keep davening, keep believing. My goal is to become the biggest global manufacturer.
Welcome to Inspired to Lead. We'd like to thank our friends at Roth & Co., innovators in accounting and business advisory, for making this conversation possible. We're coming to you from New York. I'm your host, Talia Mashiach. Today, I'm joined by the founder of OC & Co. Living, Avigail Nadav. Avigail, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm
This is
really
very exciting.
Yes, we met at the JWE conference, which was so nice.
Yeah.
And I am super excited. We have so much to talk about.
We just have to cram it into a bit.
So it is early for both of us in the morning.
Yeah.
I know I was sharing that I got in pretty late last night. And you are heading out back home to Israel
Finally.
This evening. So we're crossing paths in New York.
Perfect. I love it.
With the perfect opportunity to be able to sit down, talk a little bit about you, about your company, about manufacturing in China,
Yes.
which I am so excited for people. And for myself, I really want to understand how it works if somebody has an idea and they want to have a product manufactured. So we're going to cover all those things. But let's just start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company.
Okay, so first of all, thanks again for having me. This is such a big pleasure. So I'm Avigail Nadav. I have 4 kids. I live in Israel. I have a global manufacturing company. So I manufacture furniture, lighting, marble, and all things beautiful for the house and for hotels for designers and architects. And I deliver them worldwide. So I do the entire, we're a one-stop shop from when you actually decide that you want a table until it's actually manufactured and in your house. So that is what my company does. We are a growing company. We're now over 34 employees and growing. And and I travel to kind of visit the projects, and I'm here in the US right now for, visiting the different designers and yeah.
Is this a concept that other people have, this idea that designers can create, or architects can create like the table, the whatever piece that they want and actually have it manufactured custom to them? Is that like a new concept, or is that something that's really in the, like other people are doing?
It's a great question, because I started this company because when I was making custom furniture for myself in Israel for our houses, I either was compromising on the exact design that I wanted, because I was going to like very high-end Italian brands, and they were telling me that these are the 4 different, designs that you can use. So I was either compromising on the design that I wanted, or when I did get custom done, it was not at the quality, not my expectation level. So I think that's where my idea of the company really came in, is that you can make custom everything, but you're not compromising on anything. You're not compromising on your quality. You're not compromising on the white glove service that you're getting, and that you have someone who's backing you up if there's any issue. I also didn't get the service that I was expecting. So custom made, done well, I think is something that is not, and is like, I've never come across it yet. So to designers, it was a new concept. They would sit at home and get this inspiration of what they wanted. They would show it to me. And then fast forward 4 months, it would be in their house.
That's amazing.
And they said to me, we've never done this. We've always taken a client and run around design malls and go all over Israel or all over New York trying to find the exact sofa that we wanted, but we always didn't get exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
So this is where I feel like I'm solving designers' dreams, and also the end client who really wants something. So the designers are happy, the end clients are happy. And then obviously that makes me happy.
That's really awesome. Well, you know what? I really want to talk a little bit about how you came up with this idea and how you got to it, because I think just in general in business, when you can understand, and people say, oh, how do I come up with a good idea? It's like it usually, when you talk to people about, who've created successful businesses, it's usually like a journey that they've taken that for themselves, and they recognize that, oh, there's a gap here, and like and I want to be able to figure out how to solve this, and then you're solving, like finding a problem that you can solve, right? That's really how successful businesses are built. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to this idea, and just kind of starting with, the first, really, you shared a little bit with me about that you and your husband started in your own custom homes, and that's where you needed that. So talk a little bit about sort of how this all started, and also your background working for other companies to kind of pull all this together to come up with this idea.
Amazing. So I have a BA in business, but I started working for a very large freight company called Freightos, which was an online freight marketplace. And what they did was basically connect people who were needed to ship things and actual sellers of the freight market. So companies like Tim and Evergreen and things like that. So I did all of the shipping for very large companies like Zara, Marks and Spencer. And through that, I really learned the ins and outs of logistics, which was a very complicated market. The logistics market is, they move billions of dollars of freight a year, and every country has its own complexities. So America has its own legalities, and then Israel has its own legalities, and then there's customs and insurance. And what happens if something comes broken? And you really learn how to move goods from one place to another. And that really allowed me, and obviously most of the places that we were shipping out was from China.
Yeah.
So you learn the Chinese culture, and you learn how vendors work and what documents you need and what legalities you have to be aware of. And that really allowed me to kind of have that into the logistics market, which I think is probably one of, I'm not going to say the most complicated leg, but one of the most complicated legs in the business. And so once I was there for 7 years, and
did you always did you kind of be like, this is what I want to do? Did you
no,
just wind up
I was
with a
like, I
job?
cannot look at one more container in my life.
Okay. But you took that job. I know many women in Israel work. Like, it's very common. Women work in Israel. Like,
women work. I think women today work everywhere.
Right. But in Israel, I feel like it's very unusual to come across women who aren't working. Whereas I still feel like in America, there's still a lot of women who choose, and which, I think is a beautiful thing. And a friend of mine also actually was saying, she actually suggested that we have somebody on the podcast who's like a really professional, wife and mother, which I appreciate completely. I said, oh, I wish I could have interviewed my mom, because that would have been my mother. She was absolutely that, and an incredible role model. But in Israel, like, that's really need two incomes in Israel. And so it's really, for most, not an option for women not to work. So when you were going and got your BA, was it like, okay, I love logistics, or it just happened to be the job that you landed?
So my dad's in business. My mom is actually a veterinarian, so she runs the Biblical Zoo and the aquarium. So I always grew up with a role model of real professions, being a doctor or being a lawyer or being an accountant. And really, like, that was always in my family. But when I decided to go to business school, it was more like, okay, what am I going to do? And I said, there's no way I'm going to become a vet. And so I said, business will give me a big coverage. So when I went to do that, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. It happens to be that I got a part-time position at Freightos, but then that really, I kind of worked so hard for 7 years and really grew within the company. And
were you always a very ambitious person?
Yes, I think so. I think that was
like,
always,
just even as a kid, like.
Oh, yeah. Also very competitive, unfortunately, with the years.
Don't say unfortunately. I think fortunately. I think it's good to be competitive.
I think it's good, but I think it's also good to be competitive for yourself and not looking outside to be competitive with others. But I was for sure always a go-getter. At Freightos, they used to nickname me, if you want to get anything done, just speak to Avigail.
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised, because to make that shift from I'd say corporate to being an entrepreneur, you very much have to be, because any entrepreneur has to be a go-getter.
So the company went public, and I realized that's it. The time has done here. I left, but totally parallel to all this, I was already figuring out, because we were furnishing at the time. We were furnishing.
Talk a lot about that with your
Yeah.
husband.
So my husband does real estate. So he would buy apartments, flip them, and sell them. And at the time, the mortgages and the percentages of how much money you would be getting were very low. And we realized that if I'm furnishing now an apartment for $600,000, if I could furnish it for $200,000, that's a lot of money that you could be taking in. So we then decided to, because I had all this background in China and I knew kind of the complexities and the levels in China that you could get really low end, but you also get high end. And these companies were shipping $1 million of freight every year, that I said, you know what, this is an opportunity to really try and help the business. So we started, with 4 phone calls of saying, hi, I need to manufacture a couch. And them saying, okay, what kind of couch? That was our first kind of trial and error that we did on our own house.
So can I ask about that? So because of your connection from the job that you had, did you know what factories to call? Is there a directory of factories in China? Where does someone even, where'd you start?
So I think China is such a complicated world that everyone kind of want to try and understand, because when you really understand that China manufactures for everyone in the world, Apple, Tesla, you name them, right? So, but there is so many levels in China. So I think the biggest lesson that I've learned for myself, which we can talk about more, but is that you can't be in love with a product. You have to be in love with the process, and you have to be in love with the idea of getting it right. Because the first time you order a prototype for something, it's going to look great. The trick is to really make sure that you can scale that, and every single time you produce it, it's great, right? You can make one thing once perfectly, and then when you do a mass production of 100 pieces, it's not consistent. And consistency is key.
How did you know who to call, and where'd you start?
That's a great question. So I was shipping with the largest shipping companies in China. Okay. So, and the CEOs became good friends of mine. And I said to them, I have this idea. What do I do? So I for sure had an into China, because you speak to the CEO and he says, oh, I know the company that ships for that, and I know the company that ships for that. Speak to them. And you have a first conversation, and they recommend someone, and then you speak to that person and have another conversation, and then you start going onto different platforms like Alibaba and madeinchina.com, and you start seeing 10 different factories, but then you start filtering out by people who have export licenses and by people who don't. And you really have to do your homework to kind of understand there are thousands and thousands of factories in China, thousands. And if you don't know how to skim them out, then you're never going to get to the right one. And I think what we were looking for at the beginning was really just people who have all of the documents that you need to export to every country. Yeah. So if you look at lighting companies, you need someone that has a UL and an ETL, which are certifications for shipping lighting into America. Now, if you don't have the right certifications, you can't ship here. That, I think I filtered out 500 factories a day. Okay. And we would have an algorithm that would check what are their movements of money, how much freight are they selling a year, what kind of legalities do they have, what kind of documents are they selling, do they use, is it their own factory or is it a third-party factory, meaning there's a lot of brokers in China. Yeah. So you'll find one person who's Chinese and local, and they will connect you with 20 different factories. Yeah. But it's not them. You're not manufacturing in your own company. So I don't source in China. Sourcing, I think, is a huge, huge issue, because when you're sourcing a product and that broker is now getting his metal parts from one vendor and marble from another vendor and upholstery from another vendor, then if there's an issue, who's the father and mother? Right. The broker? You don't know that they're actually going to be there for you all the time. So then you really need to find a factory, you suggest a direct relationship with the specific factory that you could hold them accountable for the product. Correct. So I have 50 suggestions, but that would also be one of them. Okay. One of them would be, do not source in China. Always make sure that you're working with a direct factory, and make sure that by source, you mean that you're having one person who's trying to pull all these different pieces together and then manufacture it somewhere, versus having just one factory that's building it for end to end. Correct. Okay. That everything is in-house. Yeah. That you're not finding different pieces. Lillian, who's now connecting 6 different, pieces
Got
together.
it. Okay.
And my factory, you're sitting within a factory that everything is done in-house, which means if there's an issue with the metal, you're going upstairs. If there's an issue with the marble, you're going downstairs.
How responsive are the owners of these factories? Like, talk to us a little bit about how does it work? Is it in China? Is it like people who own their own factories and they want business and they're looking for business to do with like new, Americans or Israelis or whatever to like give them the work? Is it super competitive there? Like, what's it like?
So that's like already getting into the culture of China, which is, you might not think they're sharp, but they are as sharp as it gets. So if you're getting a couch for $2,000, there's a reason it's costing you $2,000 and not $8,000. There is a reason for that. They in Hebrew, there's a saying called "fayim," which means they're not suckers. So you have to make sure that you know what you're dealing with. So in China, I think I spoke probably to 50 factories a day. I used to interview them, and they all, have perfect showrooms. And
Did you call them? Did you just call them up on the phone?
I called them up on the phone. I texted them on WhatsApp. I asked to have a Zoom call. I asked to be walked through the factory. I asked to see their actual manufacturing machines. I wanted to have documents showing that the name of the factory is really what it matches up to, so I know it's not just a third party connecting me. And there was times where they connected me with this person who it looked like it was their factory, and then when I received the goods and I had an issue, he disappeared. I texted him, and for 3 months I couldn't reach him.
Oh gosh.
And then when I did reach him, he said, "I'm so sorry. Good luck." And now what?
Yeah.
Right? You're stuck with a product that looks terrible, and the photos looked great, right? And then when you come, you realize that, oh my God, it's not the same color steel, and it's not the same color leather, and it's not what happened here. And the measurements are a bit off.
And you're stuck.
You're stuck. So this, and I can tell you so many stories of products that we received that looked great in the factory, and then when you get them is not what it looks like.
Often people, I'm new, I have a new idea. I'm sure these factories get calls all the time for people that, how would they, like, there's this balance, right, of did they really want your business or you really want who needs who more kind of thing?
Correct. Good question.
So you came in probably with recommendations so they're like, oh, this is a serious buyer. But I imagine they get calls all the time. And if you're starting out and you're new, how do you play that sort of leverage game?
And how do you be taken seriously? Because there's thousands of people calling them every day.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a few ways that I can kind of answer that question. I think the first part that I'm going to discuss with here is that these factories manufacture all day, every day. That's what they do. Right. Now, it's not that they don't need you, but their goal is to sell as much as possible. I've never seen a drive for, I'm going to say, selling and money like I see them. They will do whatever it takes to sell you a piece of furniture. Now, when you're speaking to the very high end factories, that's not their goal. They pay, and this is an interesting part, and I think that ties into your question, is there's factories that pay their workers by hour, okay, which means I don't care how long it takes you to finish a product. As long as you finish it properly, I'll pay you as much as it needs. So the customer says, okay, great. The worker takes his time to really build it properly and do the stitching properly and make sure everything is perfect, regardless of the amount of money he's making, right? For him, the longer it is, the more money he makes.
Hourly, which is kind of how we do it in America.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would say 80% of factories in China, they pay workers by a finished product. So their goal is to finish as many products as they can, regardless of what they look like or the quality. And I think that was also learning curves when I started speaking to factories, is I felt like they really wanted to work with me and they really wanted the business with me. But once I started asking these questions that put them in an uncomfortable position, they basically started saying, okay, this is not really who I want to be working with, because this is a person who really knows what she's looking for and knows what kind of to put an eye on.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
So they were going to be held accountable, which filtered out for you anyway, because better for you to know that they weren't going to work out than take the chance in the long term.
Exactly. And this ties into another suggestions when you're working with China, is that you can't just, I think a big lesson that I learned is that you can't just do quality control at the end when the product is ready. You have to do quality control at every single stage of a product being made. From when you're engineering something to when you're picking out materials to make sure it's the right materials, the right leathers, the right woods, the right brasses, the right everything, to when it's first assembled, and then when it's the sponges are put on, and then when the upholstery is put on, and then when the lacquer is put on. There's so many different levels of quality control, and you have to love this process because you're going to get 7,000 prototypes that are not going to be correct. And if you just say, okay, that's it, I'm done, this is too complicated, I think the trick is to really love the process, perfect the process, enjoy it. And then and that's how you're actually going to build a business that will work and that will scale.
So what's interesting to me is it sounds like it's quite a lot of work to find the right factory for yourself. And you have, like, that's the work in finding. And then secondly is, and it's interesting because if you have a piece, if you come up with a product and you get the prototype right and you hope you could just duplicate it and you want to sell it like, 100,000, 200,000, million, whatever it is, but every single time you start from scratch with something brand new, which makes it even more complicated than, oh, I came up with like a table and I just need to I want to make 200 of that same exact table. So I've gone through that process of selecting everything. I've approved it. But do you get a prototype for every single piece? How does that work?
Wow. So that is the most complicated part of my business, because what I do is, because we're a custom manufacturer, every single piece I'm making is considered a prototype. So we do have molds open for certain designs of couches that are very popular. If you're doing like a famous Roche Bobois or a famous Minotti, or, you do one of these famous brands that people love. But that is the most complicated part, because I have a client who will say, Avigail, I want this gorgeous marble table with thin edges, but I want it this height, but I do want it with a curve ending down. And then I'll bring it to my engineers, and the engineers will say, that's not stable. Some person will come and touch it and it'll fall over. Right? So I have to work with my engineers and with these people who have been dealing with furniture for years on end and are over the age of 60. And this is what they've been doing their whole life, to really make a vision come to life. But prototyping is so complicated. So when a designer just says to me, hi, make this for me, they don't really see what's going on behind closed doors, where I have to sit with my factories for Zooms and to understand, is this going to be stable? Is this going to hold up weight? What happens if someone puts something down heavy on the edge? Is it going to tip over? And that whole process of doing that, we've failed at it so many times.
And it started, though, when it was you and your husband with the goal of simply doing it for yourself. So trying to reduce the cost of furnishing the houses to flip them, so it wasn't like, oh, this could be a whole business. This is like, oh, let's figure out, it's always so interesting because those are how a lot of businesses start. Okay, so you did that. You figured out through all that time, and were there other employees at the time, or you were doing this all by yourself?
No, it was just me. It was just me and Jonathan. And then I was like, oh, I want a new fixture, and I made a fixture, and I see pictures in the factory, and it looks great. And it comes to my house, and I realized that it's not even real brass, that it was painted. And he told me it was real brass. And then you're like, oh my God, now I have a fixture that I spent thousands of dollars on, that they told me it was real brass, but it's really not. And then you're like, okay, so I can't work at this factory. There's no transparency there. And then I said, okay, I'll work with another one. And then I gave them the measurements that I wanted, and they said, okay, no problem. But when they came, it was too heavy to be on the ceiling, and they didn't work with me to understand that beforehand. So I said, oh, I actually also need a factory that I can work with, that they will tell me, Abigail, don't do that. That's a mistake. And don't do that level of that length of a fixture or that length of a table, because that's not the right design. You need to recommend your designers to not do that design. And I remember at the time insisting that I wanted something specific, or that the client told me they want something specific. And I was at the beginning, and I just said, okay, no problem. Great. We'll do it. We could do everything. We'll do it. We'll do it. We'll do it. And then that came to kind of bite me back, because I had to then deal with the product that was defected from a manufacturing standpoint.
Did they also, I think they require you to pay everything up front, especially when it's a new relationship, right?
So everything, so that's another negotiation. You have to negotiate all the time. They would say 50%, and I would say, no, I want 30% now, 20% after, another 20 only once production is done, and then only once it gets to the port, another 20. And you have to constantly be protecting yourself and making sure that you're at a leverage there, because if you're not, they could say, sorry, that's the product. Good luck. And I've had that happen.
Yeah.
And protecting yourself from a financial standpoint is so difficult, because a product would come all the way here. The client wouldn't be happy at the beginning. I wouldn't be happy at the beginning. And then, but you paid fully. So now what?
Now I have to then manufacture a whole new one.
So I'm sure that's happened especially in the beginning.
So many times. And then you start learning how to protect yourself, how to eliminate issues from the beginning, and how to make sure that when it actually arrives already to the client, you've done 90% of your checking to make sure that this doesn't happen.
What's like 3 things you would tell somebody who was working? You've kind of shared, okay, you need to find the right factory. You need to, make sure that you lay out the times, like to be certain percentages, that to make sure you don't pay up front, which maybe the first time you work with that factory, they may not let you do that, right? You might have to, they may be like, no, your first time, you have to build the relationship. What would be 3 of the biggest things you would tell somebody who wants to manufacture a product? They have an idea and they want to make sure to do, if they were 3 things.
So I would say really, really doing your homework about the factory that you're going to be working with. So you don't have to commit to a factory right away, but ask them for every single document in the book. Make sure that you know which documents you're looking for. Really understand that they're not a third party. I think we fell so many times with third parties. That would be the first thing. The second thing is communication.
And when you say third parties, it's people who tell you they're the factory, but they're really not the factory. They're just repping factories and they're the middle person.
Right. So their agenda is really to sell, not to make sure that everything is done to the perfect end.
How do you know? What would be the thing to know, like to check that someone's the actual factory versus third party?
So usually you can ask, they have documents for each company. You can ask them for different types of, if they're registered with shipping companies, if they're registered within European standards. Like there's a lot of different documents that you can ask for, but very high-end manufacturing companies in China usually can show you all that. The low-end to mid-end manufacturers, the second you ask them for very specific documents, they don't have them. So that's something that I would do. Communication, I think, is the biggest thing, because communication is, and I know that sounds kind of like very stereotype, but with the Chinese culture, they are very in the box, which means if you tell them, I want a great couch, that's not it. You have to really communicate with them your expectations at every stage of the manufacturing process. So if from the renderings and from the DWGs, the CAD drawings that you're doing, you have to tell them, I am expecting you to recommend any issues that might arise with this. I expect you to send me photos and videos and everything always before it departs. I expect this and I expect that. And you're really, really communicating at every single stage. And the third would be to really receive samples for everything. Don't be lazy with the process. Do not be lazy with the process. Spend money on this. I call it tuition. You're spending money for school. And make sure that you're not just asking for one sample. If it's not great, ask for another. If it's not great, ask for another. And if something arrived that's not perfect, don't just say, okay, change that and now go for mass production. Yeah. No, ask for another. And this is something that will cost you money because they're not going to tell you for free, right? So it could cost you thousands of dollars to make this process. But for me, this was the schooling part. I tried to cut corners, and it always, always, always comes back to for me to have to spend more money again.
What about visiting China? Like, did you go and, I mean, we talk about getting papers, but did you like go when you kind of narrowed it down, visit and go to China and actually go see and meet with people in person? Does that matter also?
Right. So I remember the first time I said, you know what? Great. I found a factory that I think is good. I've received some great samples. I'm going to go to China. And I remember saying, I don't even speak Mandarin. It's not like it's America where there's English. There is no one who speaks English there. It's very rare. And I think this was also, you spoke about, religious women kind of working. I think this was a bit different for the market because I was suddenly a woman with young kids. And I said, nope, I'm going to travel and I'm going to go find out what this looks like. And I arrive in China. The factory picks me up. I arrive there. There's not even a bottle of water that I can read. You don't know anything. And
did you go by yourself or did your husband go?
The first time I went with my husband Yonatan.
Okay, that's good.
And we said, you know what? There's this big trend now. Well, there was a big trend of buying furniture in China and doing your entire house in China. So these people would walk you through different factories, like these Israeli people or American people, and they said we could do your entire house from China, from like faucets until flooring and until everything. So we said, you know what? We're gonna go and take that entire tour.
and see what we have to bring different to the market. If I'm going to start manufacturing furniture, why am I any different than any other company that takes them, handholds them through a whole process of buying things in China? So we go that, and what we discovered is you go to the main malls, right? You go to the malls, you go to different factories in Fushan, which is like where the big, manufacturing, big furniture stores are, and it's massive. Imagine that you're walking into Israel, and every single store is furniture. You don't even know where to start from. That's how big it is. And we realized that you're either going to very, very, very high-end workshops, showrooms, and you're either paying higher than Italy. Okay, so you're either paying like $40,000 for a couch, or you're going to very low end, which you're paying $1,000 for a couch. And then my first question is, why? Why could there be two different sofas that look identical in China, completely identical? One is $1,000 and one is $8,000. So I said, you know what? Something is not adding up here. So I said, I want to go to the factories and see what's going on. So you go to these beautiful showrooms, and I said, can I take a tour of your factory? They said, no problem. And they drive me like 5 hours to a factory that I walk in, and the quality that I'm seeing there is not matching up to the showroom. And then I said, wait, maybe the person that is manufacturing for the showroom is not the actual person that's manufacturing in the factory itself. And that's where questions started coming up about the complexities of China. And I realized I know nothing about this market. And I remember saying, I can't do this. I'm done. You feel like hard. This tiny little dust in the sand. And you're like, what am I going to do any different? And I said, okay, let's go to another factory. And my days there were 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all day, visiting factory after factory after factory after factory.
How did you speak to
them? And
them?
I remember crying at the end of the day, saying to Jonathan, we don't have a business. Forget it. We don't have a business. What's us any different than them? And you go again on these tours, and you realize that there is a difference between an $1,000 couch to an $8,000 couch. There's a difference in the wood, the birch wood that they're importing, in the bands that they're importing, in the wheels that they're importing. Are they using Chinese local zippers, or are they using YKK zippers? Are they using AE thread, or are they using not? And every single element of this, it's like, imagine like an iceberg, right? So the tip is just the design of what you're seeing, right? But underneath is really the infrastructure of every piece that you're manufacturing. And that infrastructure is what makes something look beautiful to actually last in 10 years.
Got it.
And I said, this is where my edge is going to be. Manufacturing very high end in China, but still allowing customers for it to be affordable for them. And when I mean affordable, I mean still not paying $2,000, because that means that they're buying the materials that are very cheap.
Right.
They're not selling you a $2,000 couch and spending, and they're buying it for $3,000. Trust me.
Is there different like qualities of leather?
Oh my gosh, the leathers.
So you could say something's genuine leather, but it could be a high quality leather or a low quality leather. There's a difference.
And there's different densities, and there's different weaving processes, and there's it's a whole science for every material. And I was mamash from God. I found this amazing person who became my hand holder in China. I've never met someone who was more educated on every single material. And I've been with him now for years on end.
Yeah. So that's a key thing.
And that's a key thing. And I would say you really have to build relationships with your factories. It's not just enough. You have to make them understand that if something comes not good, you have someone to work with.
Yeah.
I call them up and I say, why was this sold to me? Why did you send this to me without doing your
Did they respond to you?
And this person was my blessing in life.
Yeah.
He worked with me and learned and took responsibility. And that was such a huge thing for me when I felt like I had a partner for when the issues came up.
Yeah.
Right?
I think for sure. How did you meet him?
So I met him because I did these thousands and thousands of factories. Yeah. And my trips to China were exhausting. Yeah. You know, you have to order food from Chabad, and there's really nothing to eat there. And it's not like you can go in and buy a Pringles.
How did you speak to this guy? Does he speak English?
So he, it happens to be that I speak a little bit of Mandarin because I taught myself, because I realized that you do need to be able to communicate the basics there. But you use Google Translate, and you bring a translator. And you have to bring the right translator. You have to make sure the translator is on your side and not on his side. You don't know what he's translating. And you're constantly thinking you're going to be conned, constantly. And people don't understand how much to find a person with good midot is really something that is amongst everyone.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky to find him. And you know where I found him? I found him because I said, I don't want the big factories in the big areas of manufacturing. No. I realized that after a lot of homework, the high-end manufacturers are in different parts of China. So I said, you know what? We're hopping on a flight and we're going there. And we went there. And I started understanding where. And this person said, you don't want that. You want that. And you want this. And I said, okay, how am I going to find them? And I call my old CEO and I called my SIM guy and I called my person who I knew manufactured other stuff in China. And you really, really do not give up until you find a factory.
You have to have a lot of grit to figure that out. And
wow. And I
going.
remember walking around alone in China and like, it's a very safe place, regardless of what people think. It's the most, I think there's the highest level of security that I've ever seen. There's a camera at everywhere. And finally, I say after years, we found a factory that, thank God, we invested so much time and money in. And I'm so confident in the goods that we produce.
That's amazing.
I'm so confident, but you don't get lazy. Even if you know them and you trust them, you're still sending quality control and you're still making sure that you're stamped with European standards and you're still sending quality control for one night stand. It costs me thousands of dollars an hour. Doesn't matter. You keep doing it and you keep sending quality control and you make sure that you do not get lazy because when you get lazy, they get lazy.
How long did it take you to go from all of this like research that you had to do to like, was it a year? Was it 2 years? Because you were doing this. What was kind of really cool about this is you were doing this before you started opening it up for everybody else. You were doing this for yourself. So you were figuring this all out while you were kind of doing your own apartments that you were trying to furnish and then sell. So did you figure that all out while you were doing that business? And then once you nailed it, you're like, now I can do this for someone else. So tell us that story of how you went from helping Yonatan with his business while you were still working to saying like, this could be a business for everybody else.
So first of all, it was more like 5 years. We did it in-house for so long. And every single time a product came, we learned something new. And we said, how can we monetize this, right? Because we realized that even once you go public with this to clients and to designers, there's always going to be issues that come up. And after a year and 2 years and another trip to China and another trip to China, a lot of people, they manufacture from Zoom, they manufacture from a FaceTime. They maybe travel once or twice. We're there once every 2 months. And we show our face in the factories all the time. And what ended up happening is that over the years, before we even went public with this, you really learn the ins and outs of everything, from manufacturing to customer service, to shipping, to air shipping, to regulations, to packaging, everything, to installation, to what you need to ask before installation, what you need to make sure is in the package before. And I think it was about 4 years. We did it in-house for a very long time because I wanted to make sure that when I was coming to the market, I wasn't just someone new saying, oh, I source in China. Hi, good luck. Yeah. I wanted to really say that I manufacture in China.
Yeah.
And thank God after 4.5 years, we decided to go public. I was still working at Fredos.
Yeah.
And then when I left, I said, okay, I think we're ready to do it. And I said, we're head on. And we went and we did a first project for someone and more issues came up because they wanted me to manufacture things that I've never manufactured. And then you have new prototype lessons that you learn. So every time, I can't even tell you how every single project that we do,
you learn something.
You learn something new. And there's another mistake that happens. And there's another customer service mistake that happens. And how do you make sure that you're giving them the service that you want to represent? My goal in my company is to make my clients, who are my designers and architects, to make sure they don't feel alone in front of the client. That they know, okay, I had an issue. I made a mistake with the CAD. I made a mistake with the sizing. The sizing wasn't correct. Avigail will have my back and we'll work together to make sure that the client is happy. I sent a mirror to America. It came with the chip. I'm sending her a new one.
Yeah.
I never want the client to feel, which I felt many times, I've had quality issues that no one took responsibility for. And I said, I spent hundreds of thousands of shekels on furniture. And when there's an issue, people run away.
Yeah.
And I said, how do I make sure that I'm not that? And how do I make sure that I'm covered financially for that?
Yeah.
Right? I can't just lose money on every product that I'm making. And that is part of the reason also that I price out also my service. I'm there. I'm in America once every couple months. I'm on the projects. I'm going to see that everything's okay. I'm not sending my employees to go. I'm there. I'm in China. I'm in London. I'm in Israel. I'm making sure that there's a father and the mother for the project, so the clients don't feel like, oh, Avigail does it, sends it, and then doesn't take any responsibility.
I think that's amazing. And it's a niche, right? You figured out what was the need and you're filling it. So talk to me about the employees. When did you start hire? So you left your job. While you were still in the business of just furnishing your own apartments, did you hire employees, or you were doing that all just the two of you? And at what point did you guys start hiring people, and who were the first people that you hired?
So we were just me and him, and we would, we had these factories that we were working with, and these factories have their employees. I wasn't paying them on my payroll. And then I realized that I actually need a full-time quality control, because I need him to have my agenda, not their agenda.
Yeah.
I need, so my first hiring really in China, because I wanted to make sure I had my own engineer. I wanted to make sure I had my own quality control people. I wanted to make sure I had my own packaging people, which means every single time they were packaging my goods, I had someone on ground and there to make sure that everything was good.
So your first employees were actually in China.
Yeah, 100%.
How did you find them? Because I also, at Evid, we have a office in China. And so it was really interesting for us to figure out how we staff we have an entity that's in China, and we have a staff. So I have someone on my team I've actually never been to China. I haven't really dealt with it. My operations person's dealt with the whole thing. So I know enough, but tell me, how did you figure out how to hire people in China?
Wow. So the first person I hired, actually, I ended up firing him about a week later because I realized he was getting no work done. Obviously, the salaries are a bit lower there.
Yeah.
And then I really started consulting people that I've built relationships with over the years. And my people that I, built relationships with these factories really helped me find a person. And I said to them, I need someone who checks your work.
Yeah.
I need someone who doesn't have your agenda, who has my agenda. And they understood that, and they worked with me. And I had these amazing, amazing employees that I'm still blessed that are with me. And then my next hires were in Israel. I wanted to feel like I have a representative in each area. So I wanted to expand to Europe, and then I wanted to expand to America, and I wanted to expand. Hopefully now we're expanding a bit to Australia. And that was, really the most challenging part, because having employees abroad, you really do have to show up for them, and you really do have to make sure that they know that there's someone who's there and is with them and is taking care of them, but is also, and there has to be accountability for all of this. And then what I realized is that I need in Israel, I had an amazing boss, Efredos, who really mentored me throughout the entire 7 years. He would say to me, Avigail, you're doing this wrong. Do it again. No, not good. Do it again. And he was so hard on me. I remember crying for hours because of him in the bathroom. But he really taught me how to work with these Chinese people. And now I thank God was blessed to help me now in the business. And he really took my business and made sure it was all streamlined. It was everything's
So you
has
came
systems.
back and asked him to help you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a great
he
story.
then, he worked with me for a long time, and he really helped to bring
So
the
you
business.
went back and hired your boss from
Yeah.
that. That's a great story. I love that.
Yeah. And I never look at
The
him.
guy who made you cry in the bathroom.
So he said, now you're my boss. I never looked at
You
him as my
became-
boss, but I really just kind of looked at him as my partner. And he
You mean
came.
you didn't look at him? You
I
didn't look
didn't-
at as you
no.
as his boss.
Correct.
Yeah.
I never looked at him as being his boss now.
Yeah.
But I really just looked at him as a partner in the business. He made sure the website was up and running. He made sure that everything was through AI. So what happens when you need to upload things to the website? Imagine that every piece of furniture that you make has 30 materials. Now what? And then you have 50 products for each house. So how do you make sure that nothing of that falls between the cracks and that you don't make any mistakes? And he made sure there was a system for everything and a CRM for everything. And he really and I realized I don't know how to do this. So I need to learn to hire the right person who knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Which is another recommendation for people. Don't try and be the best at everything. Know how to hire the right people that are amazing at what they do. Hire an amazing engineer, hire an amazing designer for the website, and I think that was also a key. And Chazi, my boss, and Chazi, I hope you're watching this, but so I am going to say thank you to Chazi here, because he was such a mentor to my life in so many different areas, and he really just handheld me. So my boss, ended up working for me. And now that was, those were another person I hired in Israel. And then I hired salespeople. And then I hired actually people in the Philippines to do my sales calls because they're amazing at customer service and they're much more affordable and they're amazing. And so I have a team there now.
So if people have an issue, they call, they deal.
Yeah, there's a hotline that they can speak to, or there's like a WhatsApp business that they can speak to, and there's someone constantly there helping them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really
So
amazing.
it's
good for you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So
We didn't even speak about the kids.
I know that's where I want to go to
Yeah.
because I know we were talking before and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you have 4 little kids and you're doing all of this through that and traveling. And I mean, you've been here now in America for 2 weeks and your kids, and we were just talking before we started about the risk that the things are heating up and what if they close the airspace or they cancel and you're stuck here, and just like the life that you've chosen is not always easy. And you're talking here, and I know it's amazing, and I give you so much credit. I love these stories that so much about just finding opportunity, being curious, willing to do the hard work to figure it out, and just not giving up. I could tell from everything you're telling me, it's like there were probably 1,000 times where you could have given up on this and just pushed through and really believed in what you were doing. But this entire time you were also dealing with having your kids. And I want to talk about that and your traveling and what that was like. And then, we'll talk about what happened during war. And you're literally, you're sharing that you're in the middle of a Zoom call and bombs are going off and you're with your children and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about the, more vulnerable side of this.
So I apologize in advance if I tear up a little bit because this is the hardest thing for me, is because when you're giving all into your work and really building a company and building a reputation and building all this, I still have to say bedtime stories, right? And I have to take them to the park and I have to sit with them to do homework. And I think there's so many mothers that juggle this. I don't think I'm the only mother that has kids, but the travel, I think, is where it's really hard. Because I have a baby. My baby's 10, 11 months old now. And three weeks after he was born, I was in China. Having to, even just the basics of nursing. How do you do that? I'm not going to take my kid to China. And there was just so many different aspects to being a mom and also being on a plane and allowing them to feel loved. And I'm not going to lie that I have had the kids say to me, oh, you only care about the business or you don't. It was a huge sacrifice for me. And it's a sacrifice where a lot of times I sit and I ask myself, is it worth it? Is it really worth it for me? And that was a huge, huge juggle, and still is a very big juggle for me, because my daughter now is, she turned 12, and it's already at an age where it's not a 3-year-old who has his father, and thank God we're blessed to have a nanny, and it's not that. She wants a mom, and she wants, always there. And I think with time you learn, or I'm learning, how to really kind of, okay, Avigail, between 4 and 7, put your phone away. It's not that long. Most of the day they're in school, right? And kind of really reminding myself that the real important thing here is your family, above all. And that sometimes doesn't always also look that way on the outside. I've had crazy comments that I won't even tell you the comments that I get of, when are you a mother? And when are you this? And not getting that kind of support that if you're on social media and things like that. And now it's hard. Every mom has the mom guilt. Am I doing enough? Am I spending enough? Am I spending enough time with her? Am I present enough? And for my work, I'm on a lot on the airplane. And now I think we're figuring out the juggle of, let's say I'm doing the America trips, Jonathan is doing the China trips. We try and condense the trips, and that is, I think, always having one parent present, I think, as we found. And we also found that doing Sunday to Thursday and being home for Shabbat, even if it's in America, which that's hard because the whole day is just travel each way. And we're learning how to, during the way, and many, many nights of crying and many nights of me telling Jonathan I'm not doing this anymore, and me saying, I'm done. I have 4 little kids. Why did I take on so much to myself?
What do you answer yourself when you ask that question?
So some days this, some days that. But overall, I think that I'm setting also an example for my children, showing them that I'm first of all, I'm doing this for them. You know, I'm working hard for them. I'm trying to build a business and a legacy for myself, of course, but also for them. And my daughter sees that and you know, my sons, they're a bit younger, but she sees me fighting to also be present for her and also work to build a business. And it's okay to juggle, and it's okay to have good days, and it's okay to have bad days, and it's okay for things not to be perfect. And it's okay for things not to work out, and to have, you know, and to juggle these feelings, and being inspired to just go get it no matter what. And also having a difficult day where I'm saying, what am I doing this for? It's okay to have both feelings. That's not a bad thing. And I'm hoping that is kind of what I'm showing her.
Wow. And could we talk a little bit about how you grew up and your mom? And I imagine that's a part of inspiration, because I think often a lot of us we struggle, right, with now my kids are all older. Although I'll tell you what happens if you do something right and your kids still want to very much be connected to you as adults, which is really so nice. There is no one else to go to. If they, you know, at a certain age, they just want to talk to you. They don't need to be taken care of by a babysitter or whatever else. And so, you know, like when they're little, they need more like, you know, physical attention. And when they're older, they need more of your emotional attention. And you're the only one who can give that. And so, you know, thank God it only gets busier as the kids get older if you've built that relationship with them. But I know that, you know, as when I had little kids and was experiencing a lot of what you have, and even today, I still have to, remind them and remind myself. I still have a 16-year-old, and she will say, you're traveling again, or you're whatever, you're busy. And I remind her, like, I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm doing this for our family, for us. And I do think we do it for ourselves. Like I was curious what your answer was, because I do think that it is also okay. It is for your family, but it's also okay that you have your own ambition and your own passion and your own need for fulfillment, and your own need to be able to set a goal for yourself and be able to see that you could achieve it. So I think it could be both, right? Yeah. And I think it's also really important to be able to raise your family and to be there for your children. And it's all of those things, right? So hopefully I find that most people that are successful in their careers are also because they enjoy it and they're passionate about it and they're ambitious and they're goal-oriented, not just solely because they're doing it to make money for their family. I think
that's what makes you good at what you do.
Yeah, and it's a privilege, right? And not everybody has that. A lot of people, probably most people, have to have their careers to just purely because they need to make enough money, and they may not enjoy it. But if you have that opportunity to enjoy it, I think it's rare to find someone who's super successful that's not also enjoying what they're doing for whatever, because I think that would be really hard to show up every day and work really hard and not like enjoy what you do. Yeah, that's not very unusual. But I want to talk a little bit about the home that you grew up in, the role model. So I think also it's an opportunity that everyone says, okay, we've got to get daughters of all the women that I interview. What do their daughters have to say? But I pretty consistently hear that most of the daughters are like, but you're an inspiration for me. Like, and most of the time they're not feeling that they, didn't get something from their from their mothers, or, didn't have the time, and all that time that their moms were feeling guilty that they were busy doing whatever they were doing. But yet I don't think their kids feel that way. And in fact, you'll see very often that their daughters will then be just as ambitious and be able to see, oh, those are big goals. And they're trying to be like, how did my mother make me feel so loved and taken care of, and she was so present, and she built this big business or had this big career or ran this big company. That's usually what happens. So talk a little bit about your upbringing and your
my
parents.
Mom is the biggest inspiration to me. I mean, they weren't religious, and her and my dad became religious, but she had a dream from when she was 3 years old to become a veterinarian. She knew all along. And she, when my dad told her that I want to become frum, and if you want to become frum with me, then we can continue this relationship. And if not, we're going to have to kind of separate ways.
And they were in America at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my mom said, okay, great. Like, what's frum? and they went on this journey together. And my father, for many years, he said I was the housewife. I cooked, I cleaned, he everything so my mom could go through vet school, which is, she went to Tufts University, which was the best vet school in the country. And she never gave up on it. And I remember growing up seeing a Haredi lady who is a surgeon and running an entire zoo, but so present for me. Every day I got back from school, she was there. And I grew up with a mom who was very much a role model to me, and I think a role model to many, many people in the world, because she was the first religious Haredi veterinarian, and which is like 13 years of schooling, right? And I had a very interesting childhood. So I never grew up with kind of money being my motivation. I grew up in a wealthy family, but my motivation was always seeing the people that I loved and cared about, and my parents really doing what they wanted to do. My dad was writing, and my mom was not making a lot of money being a vet, but doing it because that was her favorite thing, and that's all she wanted to do. So to me, a big key to that was making always sure you do something that you love and that you're good at, because that is what's going to make you also enjoy showing up every day. And I grew up, I actually grew up with a leopard and a tiger because my mom was the vet. So I had a leopard in my bed for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And then I had a tiger in my bed for another few months. And
wow.
I had a very interesting childhood. And
where'd you grow up in Israel?
I grew up in Jerusalem, in Hernuf.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember saying, I'm never becoming a vet in my life.
Did you guys have enough, like a house there in Hernuf?
Yeah. We had a house in Hernuf. And the long story short, my mom had to bottle feed the tiger every 3 hours. So the tiger was home, and the tiger grew up with me. I mean, I would come back from school and the tiger would jump on me and sleep in my bed, and I have pictures I can show you afterwards. But it was really, really an amazing childhood that I'm so blessed. But I saw always parents who were there, present, but never giving up on what they really wanted to do.
Wow. And so your mother is still at the Biblical Zoo?
So now she runs the aquarium.
Okay, so she was the vet at the Biblical Zoo, and
Correct.
now she runs the aquarium.
Yeah. And I remember my childhood going and seeing surgeries on lions, and my mom having a hand stuffed in like a lion's mouth, and it was just a very rare childhood. But she was that, and then at home she was playing Rummy Cube with me. Do you know what I mean? So I never felt like she wasn't there for me.
But also,
and I'm hoping I could be that for my kids.
Right. She didn't have to travel. Well, so it was nice because she had a very intense career, but she didn't have to travel. The travel is
very difficult. Yeah. And I also think that this generation is much more distracted than the generation that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So today, I mean, your phone is your best friend.
Yeah.
As much as we don't want it to be.
Yeah.
And I think learning to put those boundaries on that, which I'm not good at, and I have to learn to be so much better at it. Those are, I think that's the biggest distraction. So I think the challenge that maybe I feel as a mother now is really kind of not even saying, okay, I'm going to put my phone away for 3 hours, because I don't think even that's capable, but even allowing yourself to kind of disconnect from work. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's basically impossible.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. I find that so hard, especially when there's like very intense things going on. Like I find that in my head, I'm thinking about. So let's just say I have this list of like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. I'm thinking about this, and then also I need to get to bed at a normal time because I have an early morning meeting, and you're sitting there and you're trying very hard to be present for that 2 hours, but it's hard to shut off the mind. So that's why I find Shabbos and Yontif to be such a gift, because that is really the time that I even on Fridays, I really try. I try not to schedule any meetings on Friday, and it's just my chance to catch up. So all that stuff, that list that I have, get all that done in the morning. And so by the time I go into Shabbos, my head is not full of all the things I have to do. And really, like, that's where I feel like I could disconnect and enjoy. And it's such, for me, I really don't know how people do it who don't have Shabbos.
I don't know how you survive without a
total
Shabbat.
recharge
It's the
for
only
me.
time that it's not only that, like Hashem doesn't want you thinking of
Right.
work. So if my mind goes there, I say, lo, זה Shabbat menucha.
Yeah.
And to me, like, disconnecting there on Shabbat is the biggest deal.
Yeah.
And And I really believe also not speaking about it, because there's no
Yes.
bracha in things that you speak about on Shabbat. I try and not speak about these things as
Yeah.
well. And listen, my biggest thing that I've learned about myself is, and I'm not always good at it, but trying to really understand that even if you have a list of issues,
Yeah.
they're going to be there in 3 hours. I promise you, they're not going anywhere. So it's saying, okay, so in 3 hours, I'm going to put it in a drawer right now, and in 3 hours, I'm going to come back to it, because they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And if it's time sensitive, like a container needs to be released right now, or it's going to be delayed another 2 weeks, then I say, okay, everyone, I'm stepping out for 10 minutes into a room, going to finish with it, and then I'm going to come back. I'm not going to do it while I'm with them. I'm going to try, because then you're also being distracted by the kids, and you're not getting it done.
Right. You don't win either way. And
Yeah.
when I've tried to even, like, I try to say to my kids, I'll be like, even my 16-year-old, she should want something. Right. I said, I really want to be able to focus on this conversation. So I want to be able to finish what I'm doing, and then I can give you my 100% attention. But I do think that this is an area where a lot of people struggle, just being able to balance all of the responsibilities and all the things that we have.
Yeah, and we didn't even touch base on this insanity of a war that has been
so
going
let's talk
on in
about
Israel.
that. And I'm also just a little bit want to touch on what it's like working with your husband, because I think
I think it's
some
great.
people do really well with that,
Yeah.
and some people don't. But it sounds like you guys are partners through and through.
Wow. So regarding the war, I think that was just an insane reality. But I think for everyone in Israel, I mean, I was on a Zoom call, and then there's a siren going off, and you have to run to the bomb shelter, right? And then, so I'm like, okay, I'll take the Zoom. So the first time, second time, you hang up the Zoom. But by the 10th time, you're like, okay, fine, we'll take the Zoom in. And then there was a couple times where I fell, like in Jerusalem, like nearby, and it was so loud that I remember my computer shut off.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, you're in this reality where your kids are crying, and you're up 15 times a night, right? I'm not even talking about the people who live like in the Tel Aviv area, right? But you're up so many times a night running to the bomb shelter. And like where we live, it's not in the house, it's in the building. So you have to, every floor has one, so you have to leave. So forget about the fact that you're not leaving in pajamas. So you have to get dressed, and you have to dress the kids, and you have to take 4 kids out, and you have to pick them up. And you have only about a minute to get there, right? And it's just it was an insane reality to try and make sure that the business was still going, and that the clients still felt, because a lot of my clients weren't in Israel. So people in Israel understood more, but what about my clients in America? Yeah. Everyone was kind of living this alternative reality, I felt like, here.
Yeah.
And people were very, very sensitive and nice about it and understanding. But if you want to just sit there and whine, you could do that all day. Like I could sit there and say, oh, it's so hard for me. So this is what you were doing. So yalla, next, And I think that was, I think that if you just kind of tell yourself, oh, this is so hard for me, then it's going to be hard for you. But if you say, okay, this is the reality of what we're living in, now we just have to kind of make it work. So I think that was
I think that's a very I think that's part of what makes
a very Israeli approach.
Yeah, it has to. That's how you survive, right?
That's how you survive.
You cannot have there is not a shred of victim mentality in Israel's society at all. Unfortunately, in America, we have a tremendous amount of that. But that, I think, is, it's just, you're a warrior. You don't, you just, no matter what the situation is, you've got to just figure out how to survive.
Wow. That is, I think, the biggest advantage. Some people say, Israelis are rude, or Israelis are this, but you have to understand, we're living in survival mode.
Yeah.
You're completely trying to survive the day.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's coming next, literally. I mean, I was stuck where was I stuck? I was stuck in China. For one of the wars, and I was stuck there for like a few more days, and it's like, it just becomes your new, and your kids. Listen, my 12-year-old is probably more mature than half the 12-year-olds I know, because her responsibility always was, we all did it, but if I had to get Jackie the baby, she had to go and pick up Natan and take him to the bomb shelter. And if Yonatan was getting Uriel because he was sleeping too much, and we all kind of did it together, and I think there you realize that if you're just going to continue being the victim, you're getting nowhere. You're really going to get nowhere. And when you wake up and you say, okay, yalla, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to sit in the bomb shelter all night? Okay, correct. And learning that it makes you resilient. It makes you resilient. So you have a product that didn't come good? Okay, so you make another one, So a client is upset with you? Okay, it's not the end of the world. Literally not the end of the world, right? And I think that, so you can look at this war as saying, wow, what a mess and how difficult. Or you can say, בסדר. We're working together to become more resilient. We have more emunah. The amount of emunah that this thing allows you, you're saying, maybe my business is going to fail now. My ships were stuck out of Israel. They couldn't even come in. I've had furniture waiting on ships for weeks because the port wasn't functioning. And so what are you going to say? Oh, that's it. I have no business. Or you wake up and you say, yalla, let's go to the kotel. Let's daven. And if it might not work out, it's not in my hands, And I think that gives a lot of tools to your toolbox in business. So this is also kind of my chance to say to all of the Israeli entrepreneurs who had businesses that were all paused and business kind of stopped for a little bit. And it was very difficult. And they just keep going. And it's very inspiring to see.
So inspiring. And a lot of them, their husbands, themselves, their children out at war. They have to just leave their jobs for months.
I've had friends who the husbands left for days, months at a time. And, we're all sitting there trying to cook food and send food to the soldiers. And we're trying to help our amazing country and really trying to be there. On the other hand, Yonatan was too old, was not called for miluim or anything, right? So you're in this area where you're trying to help, trying to run a business, trying to be a good mom, but also trying to give to your country and not really sure how to do that. And it was a very interesting and complex and difficult period for the business. And then back to your first question about working with Yonatan, because I think that was also challenging during the war because everything is just a little more tense. But overall, I'm so blessed to have the most amazing partner. And working with him, our mazal, I don't know how you say that, our luck is that we're in very different niches. So he does like the financing, the quality control, the regulations, all that. And then I'm more in the front of the business and dealing with the designers and the factories and things like that. So it really allows two different areas of expertise. And if he had to do what I do, he'd kill himself. And and vice versa, there's no way I could do what he does. He wants to see the back of the chair and the screw that went in. And I'm like, just, I don't know, make it work. Just make it happen, right? And I think that really kind of works together. And I won't lie that obviously when things are more tense in the business or if the business is a bit slower at sometimes, which every business is, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Everything is a roller coaster.
Everything is a roller coaster. Yeah. And people think it's all pink. No. Not at all.
Yeah.
And that as I think when it's tested more, because he's like, wait, so what's happening with that? And I said, I don't want to talk about this right now. We spoke about it yesterday. I don't want to have to get into this conversation again. And having to learn how to also separate your marriage.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you create the boundaries that it's not just business partners?
And right.
Also,
and that, I think, is the biggest thing that we learn is that, let's say, if we're going on a date, we're not allowed to mention work. And then it's also finding, again, that area that we both love and share and have connection with to make that conversation continue. And that was a bit of a challenge, but it's you realize that we're both so passionate about the business, and we're both that it really also became like it connected us a lot because he was always doing real estate and I was in logistics, and it was like, okay, how was your day? How was your day? Great. But this is an area, and we built this together, and we learned together, and we fell together, and it strengthened our marriage. And I think that the key thing for something like this is to really allow, I would say, a separation of areas of what each one does. And I would say also communication and really, really explaining one to another. Like I would tell him, when you just come and you tell me, like, why is that couch looking like that? It makes me feel very like as if you're saying you did something wrong, when really we're in this together. And then he says, when you're not paying the enough amount of attention that I need to the logistics and the paperwork and how things are done, it causes my whole day to be off. And kind of learning how to communicate also from a partner perspective and also from a business partner perspective. And I think that that's something that we're constantly learning all the time as well.
That's amazing. Okay, so what is next for you? Like you're very ambitious, which I love, and so goal-oriented, and you're still so young.
Yeah.
So what do you, like, do you have a big goal? Do you just kind of like, look, I just want to, like, is there something that you're going for?
My goal is to become the biggest global manufacturer, which means I'm not stopping in Israel. I'm not stopping in America. And America is its own huge market. I want to get to Australia, and I want to get to South Africa, and I want to get to Japan, and I want to get everywhere. And the reason for that is I really want to build a brand that the customer service and quality are the top pillars in it, which is really what I'm working so hard to do. And that actually pulled me into some conferences. I helped with some conferences here in New York, and I joined a bunch of different organizations to speak at. And I really believe that being a woman and an entrepreneur, but not in an area. I want to be all over, because I really believe that women with inspiration to lead, and there's so many of them. I meet them every day. They have to be out there. And I think my biggest piece of advice would be to do not think small. Don't think that I just want to be in the Lakewood area or just in the New York area. No, go global. How are you going to do it? I don't know. Figure it out. Jump on an airplane. Go be on a podcast somewhere. Go do one kitchen somewhere. Go and just get out there. And I'm blessed for the company to really have grown. And now I'm just trying to continue to grow the network and grow the designers and grow the brand and do some philanthropy and things on the side that I can help with as well, and really just be out there.
It's amazing. And is it a goal to leave this company to your family, to your children?
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather started one of the largest toy store company. He started KB Toys.
Oh, wow.
Which was Kaufman Brothers. And he's an inspiration. He had over 1,000 stores, and he really just kind of left that legacy to the kids.
Was that on your mother's side or your
my
father's
dad's side?
Okay.
My dad's dad. And doing that, he was also helped build a Chabad house in Lennox so my father could have where to daven, and helped do charities in Israel, and really just was such a good Jew. And he really inspires me to build a company that I can leave to my kids, and my family, but also really to not kind of forget the important things, which are our family and chesed and doing good for organizations and countries, and really just trying to be a good Jew and a good person. I mean, I remember my childhood doing Meals on Wheels with him and giving food to people that needed it while he was a huge CEO for over tens of thousands of employees.
That's amazing.
And that was,
wow,
he was a huge inspiration to me.
So that, you know what? So I've got your role model.
Yeah.
And so what would you say is your superpower?
I think my superpower is, if I'm a must say, I feel weird saying that about myself, but I think I'm a connector of people. I think I'm a people's person. And I meet someone in the room and I say, oh my gosh, I need to connect you to that person. You need to meet that person. That person will help you grow your business. And I'm not looking for anything in return. I just really believe that if you do good for other people, good eventually comes back to you. I've seen it again and again and again. So when I'm standing yesterday at the Jerusalem Post conference and I see a person there that I think could be beneficial for that organization, I try and put them together. So people connect. Nick made me the connector, because I really believe that bringing people together and having good relationships allows you to grow with personalities, with relationships, with the business, with everything. And people, to me, people's first. So your employees are first. And that is, I think that would be my biggest strength in the business.
And what is your final message to the audience on this incredibly inspiring and educational time that we've had together?
It's going to sound very Jewish, but davening, to me, that was, don't take anything for granted. Keep davening all the time. Obviously, on the business side, we spoke about recommendations, whether it's perfecting a prototype or perfecting this, or asking, not giving up no matter what. And I know people say it a lot. You're going to run into 7,000 issues. So you either can pick up your hands, or you can say, you know what, let me try and solve that issue, or let me adapt the business model, or let me try and do that again, and enjoy that process, because that process is going to happen no matter what. And to really, really believe, and I really believe it, that it's all from there. So keep going, keep davening, keep believing that it's all from there. Don't think that it's you, because it's not. It's bemet Elokim. I really mamash believe that, and just keep going.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was
really
such a treat.
And I'm so fascinated by the manufacturing process. I'm so inspired by your grit, by your energy, by your passion. And then, of course, to be able to pull it all back in, that the recognition that it's really not us. And I always say, you do the best you can do, and then you leave the rest up to Hashem.
Mamash. So thanks.
So,
thank you again
so
for
much.
having me.
And
hopefully we'll meet in Israel.
Absolutely.
This episode was made possible by our friends at Roth & Co. We are grateful for their continued partnership. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you'll join us for the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch this conversation on YouTube, so be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until we meet again, stay inspired to lead.